need it. So I hope that it's interactive and helpful and applies to everything we design.
Oh, whoa.
Do you want the lights off, Audrey?
Okay. You guys see this? Okay, how do we stop it from going pause? There we go.
I just use the arrows,
Oh,
like
okay.
left and right. On or off lights, what do you think?
What do you guys like?
What's better for the GoPro?
Off is great.
Off is
Off
great?
is
Looks
great.
fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, how do I stop this from continuing?
Oh, you must have it. Do you have it automatic?
I don't know what I did.
Here, let's see. Let's see, so if you're there,
Oh, stop.
it should. It should.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay. So I love this quote by Margaret Wheatley. All of this started with having one conversation about an experience I had. Oh, there we go again.
Good one again? Let me
It
try
has a
some.
mind of its own. End show.
So I think,
Let's try this.
help me out, students,
Try
if there's
again.
anything I usually then will just go and highlight
I think
these.
you go to slideshow and then auto advance
Yeah.
something. There's something that has to be checked.
Slideshow.
In the slideshow one.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought if you just highlight them all.
I don't remember. There's an auto advance.
Yeah, I think if we highlight them all.
I'll just do one by one.
Yeah, what is it doing?
I'll just click one on one.
Over here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
just do
this.
that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Oh, you mean to leave it like that?
I guess. I
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
But I just gotta go with it. So anyway, a little bit about me. I am married to Ty Beasley. He teaches here in Norman at Norman High. He's a special ed teacher. We have 3 boys. And by education, I'm a political science major. I always had a passion for civil rights, and I work as a paralegal. I do estate planning and corporate management. I have for 20 years. And so I talk to people about dying, but also setting up a business and looking forward to the future. So I'm a volunteer, an advocate. I'm the chair of the Family Advisory Council at Oklahoma Children's Hospital at OU Health, and I have been for 4 years. And I served on the ICC for the state of Oklahoma, which is where the Department of Health and Department of Ed come together to form Sooner Start, which from 0 to 3 children with disabilities, it's a program they can go through. And I spend a lot of my time doing this right here, talking to people about what equal access means in buildings and also parks. My son Max was born with hydrocephalus. So hydrocephalus is where you create too much cerebrospinal fluid in the interventricles of your brain, which that was because he was born with spina bifida, which is where part of your the bones in your vertebrae aren't formed correctly, and at birth you have a spinal cord injury. His defect is at his S2 vertebrae, so way down low. And when he was born, his spinal cord was kind of tasseled a little bit, and they put it back where it needed to go. But from that, he has severe nerve damage from his waist down. So his bowels, his bladder, his muscle groups. And next Wednesday, he's going to go in for a detethering surgery where his spinal cord is attached to muscle tissue, and they have to go in and release it. And so his spinal cord can move freely, hopefully relieving a lot of his symptoms he has. But he has very weak leg muscles, and he does not have the, he doesn't know when he needs to go to the restroom, and he also takes medicine to paralyze his bladder muscles because he has what's called a trabeculated bladder. He has to take medicine for that. But anyway, it also makes me have to cath him every 4 hours. Y'all know what clean intermittent catheterization is? Mm-hmm. A lot of people need that for kidney and bladder health, and it's a lot more common than you might think. But anyway, I have to cath him every 4 hours. This was Mother's Day at my visit at the Oklahoma Children's Hospital, and the button was not working. I had a mess in the parking lot. The baby changing station was off the wall in the room, and whenever I went to ask where I would cath him at, the nurse or the person at the front office, the desk, said, just go change him out there on the couch. And so I was like, okay, well, he's a baby, right? he was almost 2. And it wasn't until I was cathing him in front of a room full of people and all their eyes were on me how incredibly inappropriate that situation was for him and me. Something very private, his restroom need. And I thought that day, well, what am I going to do whenever I don't have access to a baby changing station? Those things only hold 50 pounds. What am I going to do? And so I asked the hospital. I decided to have a conversation that mattered one day, and I asked the hospital, what are we going to do about whenever he's 50 pounds? This is the last time Max was on a baby changing station. He weighed 49 pounds then. That was 3 years ago. He now weighs 87 and is in kindergarten and 6.5 years old. So it started a conversation about we need to form a family advisory council at the hospital, and a group of amazing parents and volunteers and came around and formed the family advisory council, and together we worked to get a changing table at the Children's Hospital. In the meantime, I met with our state representative, and he helped me draft Max's law. In 2020, Max's law had a lot of support, and we can go in and talk about Max's law and how 4 years later, we still have legislators in the state of Oklahoma that are perfectly content with Oklahomans being naked in parking lots and directed to the floor in our restrooms. But we're in year 4, and it's not going to get out of committee. But anyway, I hope you'll educate yourself on Max's law, but I'm here today to talk to you about why Max's law is important. So, this is after our capital renovation. We just spent $280 million on a capital renovation, and we have a medical table in our Oklahoma State Capitol building covered in duct tape with a leader of our Senate Pro Temp Greg Treat, refusing to replace that with a $2,500 table that would move up and down and accommodate Max's restroom needs. It took 5 attorneys in 4 years to get him agreed to do that. ADA grievance procedures protect disabled Americans from those who refuse to acknowledge their federal rights. So there's the 2010 Standards for Accessible Design, right? And there's being compliant with the 2010 Standards for Accessible Design and being ADA compliant. So we can have barriers. There's barriers in this building. So if Max were with me today, where do you think Max would have restroom access in this building? And if I asked any random employee of this building, where would I have restroom accommodations for Max in this building, what do you think they would say?
Wired, right?
They might offer this table,
Yeah.
or assume I can pick him up off the floor and offer the floor. But the reasonable answer to that is, I don't know. But this building is a Title II building covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And if Max were here with me today and an employee of this building were to direct me to the floor or the table and not offer a reasonable accommodation, I would have to file. If they didn't want to fix the problem, I could file an ADA grievance with the University of Oklahoma, and then I would have to force them to provide restroom access here. So we have a known barrier in society, right? When we have a known barrier in society, and if caregivers and self-advocates can file an ADA grievance on a building, that's where you all come in, is that you're building you're building those buildings, and you can go above and beyond outdated minimum building standards until those come to play, right? Because the buildings you're going to build them for everybody, right? I had to change him in my car twice at the Capitol. And every building you look at, accessible parking's right in front. So, no qualified individual with a disability shall, by reason of such disability, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of the services, programs, or activities of a public entity or be subjected to discrimination by any such entity. That right there is what it took 4 years to explain to leadership in our Capitol building, that disabled Americans should not be naked in a parking lot or directed to the floor in that building. 4 years. It's still not installed. It's got a work order. So Title III buildings are schools, movie theaters, recreation facilities, doctor's offices. This is my friend Connor, and I have permission from his mom to show that picture, but that was just a year ago at Integris Baptist Medical Center. This floor in the middle, that's at Penn Square Mall. And this is the space at Children's Hospital. This is before the table was installed. But that area, that area is saved for equipment, and a caregiver is not, space held for someone to be on the floor in our bathrooms, is it? So Max goes in to have surgery next week, but this picture was taken right after he had bilateral femoral head surgery. So they took his femurs and cut the heads off and rotated them. He had a lot of hardware. Anyway, so could you imagine lifting a child, because he'll have that surgery again in a few years, and by then he might be 130 pounds, but could you imagine lifting him down to the floor and then back up again in a wheelchair? So the floor isn't even really an option. It's not equal or equitable treatment. So diving into how are we in, this was 2019 is whenever I started really diving into this, but how are we 30 years past the ADA and we still don't have restroom access for just some of our disabled Americans? And I start diving in, and Congressman David Cicilline, he actually is stepping away from Congress as of yesterday, he announced it, but he introduced federal legislation called the Babies Act. And so if you go into any federal building, they have a baby changing station in that building. But what they did is they failed explicit federal protections for those weighing 51 pounds or more, because all baby changing stations max out at 50 pounds. So I took this issue, like I did with Children's Hospital, to the Will Rogers World Airport. And at the time, Karen Carney was out there, and I said, where would my son have restroom access in this building? And she didn't like the idea that we would either be returning to a car or letting disabled Americans sit in soil, or directing them to the floor or the terminal, a bench on the terminal in front of everybody. So she went to work right away. But that got me into all of our airports under federal aviation, the FAA laws, regulations, they have what's called service animal relief areas. And we need service animal relief areas because we have disabled Americans that need service animals, and they can't be going outside passing through checkpoints. They need to be able to relieve themselves and go back on, right? But there was a time for about 3 years in Oklahoma City where service animals had more longer than that, but had more federal protections, and still do, but more access to the Will Rogers World Airport. Our service animals had restroom access, but Max did not. The Science Museum of Oklahoma was the first one that acted really quickly. Within months, they had installed this medical table up in their family restroom. It was in the back, on the second floor, fairly far from anything in the entrance, but at the time, that was what was, that's called a temporary accommodation. And then Woven Life generously donated a height adjustable changing table. It's a $2,400 table. You can find it in Curiosity. I don't know if y'all have ever been to the Science Museum of Oklahoma, but it's a fun place to play. But in this restroom right here, you'll find that table. It was the first height adjustable changing table in a museum in the state of Oklahoma. So here's my people at the Family Advisory Council. This is an older picture, so there's a few of them that are missing. But all of those people have children that Oklahoma Children's Hospital has helped out quite a bit. And this was the first adult-sized height adjustable changing table in a state-owned building and hospital in the state of Oklahoma. And it's wayfinding, so not only just putting in the table in a room that is equal to access that you and I are used to, but wayfinding is important too. So any of these, the directories, looking at accessibility pages, I hope you'll write this down. I want you to go check out the Oklahoma History Center's accessibility page on their website. And all of those accommodations should be thought of when planning a building, because those are the people that are going to be visiting these buildings. So where's a nursing mother's room? Where's accommodation, where's a quiet space for those on spectrum disorder? You know, is there sensory kits available? Do we have vision, hearing impaired? Do we have all these issues covered in a building that provide basic human needs for people entering that building and to have the full experience like a neurotypical, any neurotypical person would. This was the second changing table installed. That's at the Oklahoma History Center. And Dan Provo, I ran into Trey Thompson. If you don't know who Trey Thompson is, he is over the Capitol Restoration Project. And ran into him at the Capitol one day and gave him a wheelie and said, hey, I need to talk to you. And within a couple hours, a couple days, he had me on the phone with Dan Provo, who's the director over there. And within a couple months, this was installed. So I got to meet Hans.
Yes.
Yeah, and he helped plan Scissortail Park. So this is a cement bench that I advocated for at Ruby Grant Park 5 years ago. I don't know if y'all, who's been to Ruby Grant? You gotta go. It's the most inclusive park in the state of Oklahoma. It is barrier-free. It is amazing what they've done out there. But my husband and I went to a planning commission meeting, and we were like, our son, he's gonna outgrow baby changing stations. What's the solution there? And this is what the developers of Ruby Grant Park came up with, is that a cement bench that's indestructible and at the same height as an adult-sized wheelchair for easy transition. So yes, you're gonna have a caregiver bending over, but there's also room there for a caregiver to sit down, but to have a baby changing station or to put a $2,300 height adjustable table inside a park, chances are it's probably gonna get vandalized just because people are brutal to city parks. But that's what I've been advocating for at Scissortail Park, because right now that's all they offer on the northern end of the park. The southern end of the park was recently opened, and we do have an adult-sized changing table, but it sits up about this high. And the problem with the ones that are mounted to the wall that are adult-size is there's going to be a time, I can imagine Max being your size someday soon. Do you think I could lift you up out of a chair and put you on a table sitting here without hurting myself or dropping you?
Yeah.
It'd be hard, wouldn't it? So, but could you envision yourself being in a wheelchair and transitioning over to a bench, or me helping you transition, slide you over? So that's and plus it's $800 versus, anyway. I have to tell you, when we have more time one time, maybe I'll tell you a story about how people can be brutal in the parks. But this is what it looks like. In every family restroom in Ruby Grant Park here in Norman, you'll find those benches. And it's what I've included on my code proposal change for the city of Oklahoma City. So this is what a service animal relief area looks like at an airport. They converted a family restroom into a service animal relief area because there was new federal regulations that came out. But in doing so, that was the space that could have accommodated an adult-sized changing table, but they had no other place to move the service animal relief area. So they had to convert the nursing mother's room. This used to be a nursing mother's room at Will Robertsville Airport. This is the 17th airport in the nation to put one in, and now there's 18 airports. So when you're talking about hundreds of airports across the United States, I think it's pretty cool that we came in like top first, right? So when they redid the terminal, there's two nursing mother's rooms now, one on each end, and this took up the old nursing mother's room. Oklahoma City Convention Center. Anybody live in Oklahoma City? So MAPS, were you familiar with MAPS projects?
Yeah.
So Oklahoma City Convention Center was a MAPS 3 project, and the first day it was open, Mayor Holt says, hey, come down, check out our new convention center, it's beautiful. And I called, and I didn't go down, but I called and I said, you know, if I brought my son, my family down, and my son needed restroom access, and he's outgrown the baby changing station, where would you direct me? And I had leadership in that building to direct me to the floor in the restroom. First day it was open. So that conversation led me to Tom Anderson, which he's retired now, but Tom Anderson led me to Keith Wilkinson, who's the ADA coordinator for the city of Oklahoma City. And he's been working for the city for a whole long time, and he said, you know, I've never had this issue brought to me, but now that I see it everywhere I go. And he's the one that kind of said, hey, we're gonna go arm in arm, and we're gonna either amend a code that's coming down. The state has all their code changes, right? All their, from statutes and case law, and there's 76 jurisdictions across the state, and everybody's changing their codes, or updating their code standards. And we just happened to catch it at the right time, and so I submitted a proposal to the Oklahoma City Building Code Commission for an amendment to the, to how Oklahoma City defines a family restroom. And that if a building size is big enough to trigger, that's all very important. Signage, so whenever I went out to the Will Rogers World Airport, they still didn't put up their signs, and so even if you were walking by and knew there was one in the airport, there wasn't even a sign on the wall saying it was there, but they're working on getting all the wayfinding up to date. So Max's Law. I want you guys to take off this card, and I want you each to have one of these wheelies. I want you to know these come all over the world. I'm not kidding. Canada. I started collecting these a whole long time ago, back in 2019, because I believe that people need to be represented in planning, you know, on toy aisle, and for, oh, that one's kind of, they've been everywhere. This one's kind of, can you help me? Yeah, help me pass them out. But when Mattel knew I was using these for advocacy tools, I showed up one day and there was 2 boxes sitting on my porch. So if you get a pink one by chance, that might be one from Mattel. But every leader, I probably have handed out close to 1,000 of these or more. But every leader, all of our legislators, every leader in our city, I'll make sure that Hans gets one. But I hope that you'll keep that and remember that people need representation, right? When we were kids, I'm 44, y'all are a lot younger than me, but when I was a kid, disability was not represented on the toy aisle at all. And, you know, thoughtful planning isn't represented very much either. And aside from women, disabled individuals are the largest minority group in the country and the least underrepresented. So I want to give this time an opportunity for y'all to talk and ask questions.
Does everybody have one of these? Do you want everybody to have?
I brought voter registration cards.
No.
Just in case any of you are not voters, I would love for you to take one and become a registered voter.
So there's 2 different ones though, right? So there's.
No.
I think those are the code.
Yeah, they're the
Yeah,
same. These two
I
are
have
the
a
same.
Okay.
So we can go over
This
it.
one.
So everybody have one of these?
I realized I didn't bring you the water I told you I was going to.
It's okay.
So
I'm
that's
okay.
why I ran and got it. So Q&A time? Questions?
So there was a mother that advocated for this. She went before the International Code Commission and said, we need change. I've reached out to my members of Congress for 5 years, and none of them, even knowing that their federal buildings that they office in do not have restroom access for Max, they just refuse to help me on this issue. And there's not an advocate nationwide that has gotten the ear of a member of Congress. We've got disabled Americans being directed to the floor by other Americans and half naked in parking lots. And we have legislators in the state of Oklahoma who actively work against that change, and members of Congress that don't take the issue seriously. So anyway, the International Code Commission and its code proposals, so it kind of goes to you guys, he could probably tell you more, but kind of goes hand in hand, step by step. As soon as the ADA standards for accessible design are updated, the international code standards, and that's what, so when you travel to foreign lands, you know, you go to Canada, you can expect to see the similar accommodations there, whether it's traffic signals, restrooms. Speaking of Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom are 2 decades ahead of us in this planning. 2 decades. You go to Australia and they actually have just restroom pavilions. And if you're, you can apply for a key and go in, and they have hoist track systems, so anybody in society can go out and participate and go to Scissortail Park or anywhere. But we're so far behind on that. Anyway, so this had unanimous support from the International Code Commission, and I hope you'll take a moment and read through it. Schools are included. Schools are included. This school, University of Oklahoma, is included in the ADA. It's federal protections. So if Max were to come here and still need caregiver assistance, we're hoping that he will be old enough to start caring for things on his own more, that now it's really hard for him. But he would have an opportunity to come and study at the School of Architecture and not worry about his restroom needs while here. Okay, so any questions?
So with these tables, how much clear space do you need around to maneuver if you're using them in this areas? Because I know, like for wheelchairs and stuff, we have a requirement on that. So if we were putting a table in, like how much would we need?
The same radius as going through a door.
No
So
problem.
32, was it 32 inches? 33 inches? You still need the maneuverability of going around the table. I'll pull up the one. So this is on a wall, but there couldn't be anything blocking that, right? That's not really a good picture. This one. So you have, when that folds down, yeah, the door to this family restroom swings open here. Yeah,
So
you have to think
the
of,
main access point is from like the long side, not the short side. Okay.
because the table folds down, and then this hand control, you have several options with these. You can either have a hand control or a foot pedal. Which one's best for the individual with disabilities?
Hand control.
Because they can do it themselves. So when Max goes to use the table at this, so this folds down, and then it lowers. I give him the remote control, and he can lower it down, and then slide over, and then raise himself up, and then I can help with this, because he's got AFOs, which are ankle braces, SMOs, AFOs, and his shoes, and then pants, and he can only stand for about 30 seconds right now. So there's no way to, if he wears pull-ups, with this I have time to, or I have, and it comes way up here, then I just take all of his shoes off, and his braces off, and his pants off, help get a new pull-up on, get him dressed again, and then he can lower himself down and get off. So all I have to do is assist him with getting his shoes and pants back on. And I'm not down here on the floor bending over, right? Could you imagine going to the Will Rogers World Airport with your grandma and having to change her on the floor if you took her to Disney World? That'll never happen at the Will Rogers World Airport again.
That's what I was wondering. I don't know how to form the question, but just thinking is like people get older, you know, different health circumstances, like people with bladder cancer have a port that goes into a bag. I don't know all the, you know, correct terminology, but just thinking about all the different options, and maybe there's even more configurability or things needed as there's different conditions or different age groups too.
Well, think about, does anybody have a loved one in an assisted living center? A grandparent?
Yeah,
that's-
yes,
Yeah, so my grandmother spent the last year of her life with Parkinson's, and the medicine that they treat Parkinson's with basically can paralyze you at times, depending on how bad your Parkinson's is. But we couldn't have taken her anywhere.
Yeah.
Now we could actually go to the airport and actually take her on vacation. Because there's other airports, right? All Florida airports they're all getting tables. A lot of them have them.
Well, that brings up a really good point. I mean, is it only buildings? It's not about transportation, right? Because I mean, planes and trains, I mean, they have the tiniest restrooms ever.
You can look at, the advocacy work for planes and making those restrooms more accessible, and people are wanting to stay in their motorized wheelchairs, and making those accessible with a motorized wheelchair in them. You're talking about a lot of real estate within a
Yeah.
tiny airplane.
Or even a place to sit in the plane, right? Not
Yeah.
only just, not the restroom only. Wow.
Yeah, if you were to take a bus, we went on a bus trip, wants to go skiing, and you can imagine this tiny little restroom inside a bus. Mhm. Those are a lot of issues that are presenting right now.
Is there any additional support needed in the wall, like just to attach? Is it some plywood backing?
Yep. If you don't have the support back there, you have to put one for a wall-mounted one. Whereas the one at the Science Museum, this is the one that's real popular.
Yeah.
You don't need that, but also the wall-mounted one offers more space. So if you were to go into these restrooms just down here, I popped in real quick, I would have to measure, but just moving the partition wall from swinging out this way to swinging out this way, making that accessible stall really big, you might be able to get a wall-mounted one back there, but it costs more money because you gotta put supports back there,
Yeah.
drop a cord and change the partition wall, whereas these, if there's room for them, they're the best.
So I thought I don't want to say baby, right, but a changing station, I thought couldn't be inside a stall normally, but it's better to have one than not, right? It's better
There's
to
no
have it
regulating
inside a
it.
stall.
There's
than-
nothing
yeah.
regulating, that's why we need code, that's why
Yeah.
we need building codes, so when we're building new or renovating old, they know what to do. Mhm.
You mentioned in the Will Rogers report,
Mhm.
it's in the nursery bathrooms, like the mother's nursery, is that?
They relocated it.
Okay.
So when we had a new terminal put in, the terminal expansion out there, they relocated the nursing mother's room to the new terminal. So where this used to be a nursing mother's room, now it's, if you walk outside this door, there's a door over here too, and this is the men's restroom, and down this way is the women's restroom. So there's not even a sink in this room. And whenever I went into there to tour, they didn't even have a trash can. It was just a table in a room. I'm like, we need access to water, we need a trash can, we need something to wipe it down with. There wasn't, but that had just been installed too, okay? And so if there's nothing regulating on what to do, we're literally just trailblazing accessible restrooms in 2023. Right? And we have people in the Oklahoma legislature fighting this. It took 4 years to put a table like at the Science Museum of Oklahoma to convince Senator Greg Tree that Oklahomans needed a $2,400 table. He spent more than that on attorney's fees fighting
What was his argument against it?
me. Because it wasn't included in the 2010 ADA standards for accessible design, and we just had a newly renovated Capitol that was, that passed code inspection. And he didn't understand the difference between being in compliance with the standards and being in compliance with the ADA. It took me and the Disability Law Center literally just like, there's a difference. He didn't want to acknowledge the difference, so he would rather be, he chose, and is choosing, because the bill is going nowhere, and maybe you guys can sit down and email your state legislators tonight and say, why isn't Max's law progressing in the legislature? But anyway, yes, $2,300. A lot of my time. And if you'll join that group on Facebook, you'll get to see all about it.
That's another question. What about, like, I saw that now OU Health has one. But what about the smaller clinics? I mean, I think about the dentist, I think about physical therapy. Is there any small clinic in Oklahoma that has one of those?
There's been a lot of places put in the medical table. You'll find these a lot of places, like the Discovery Lab in Tulsa. They just last week they put one in. But if it's not a requirement, then they don't. And if it's not brought to their attention, hey, we have a visitor that needs restroom access, they don't have to put one in. But yeah, Max goes to dental appointments, and our dentist office does not have an adult-sized changing table for him, and I've never asked for that either, but the issue has never come up. So, but if he were to go get his teeth cleaned and have an unexpected bowel movement while there, I would either be forced to leave the appointment or change him in my car. But if we're building brand new dental facilities, and we can make, instead of, if you have small office buildings like that, you know, all-purpose, what are they called, unisex restrooms, family restrooms. We used to, if you'll ever get real bored, you can study up the history of restrooms. But prior to women entering the workforce, you didn't have men and women's restrooms. In fact, if you go into really, really old buildings, that didn't come into play until men became uncomfortable having women in the restroom with them, or vice versa. So now we're deciding as society, maybe it's best to have a restroom that accommodates all people, including an adult-sized changing table, and maybe another restroom that accommodates all people that doesn't necessarily need one, in smaller clinics like that, instead of a men and women's restroom. Because what if there's two women that need to go pee, and then we just, both go at the same time? Yeah.
What else could be helpful? Because I'm thinking about, it sounds like you bring wipes and pull-ups and, right, all of that, the supplies.
Yeah.
But then, I know as a practicing architect, I design a non-gender specific or women's restroom. It's got a napkin dispenser,
Yeah.
the disposal, right? We got paper towel dispenser, toilet paper. It's not like bring your own stuff all the time, right? So is there really the possibility and need of having dispensers for diapers and pull-ups and wipes?
A hand sanitizer?
Yep.
So whenever I'm helping him get ready and he's on the table, then the sink, I get him settled and the sink is over here. But my hands can be sanitized in clean intermittent catheterizations. I'm basically inserting a tube into his urethra to drain his bladder. But anything that's on my hand is also going into his bladder.
Yeah.
So having a hand sanitizer, like close by, and then maybe just a little shelf to put a little disinfectant thing, so when I'm done, I can clean it up, even though we travel with a pad, a washable, it's like a big pillowcase, basically. But to have like a Clorox wipe there too, that I can clean up and make sure that I'm leaving it clean and as clean as possible for the next person. And instructions, so right here, you can't really see it, but right there, those are the instructions on how to operate this, because if you were to walk in and see that before today, would you know what it was? So we're normalizing needs, and I'm hoping that we can start normalizing an adult-sized changing table in our family restrooms. And so whenever you look at that, you walk in with your child, I don't know what to do with this. The instructions tell you to just pull it down, it just, it drops. And then this is just an up, down, that's all, the only options there. That's all you do, is pull it down, use up or down, go up and down. But yeah, if I were to walk in and not know what that is, I'd be like, what? What is that? So instructions, wipes. The Bethany Children's Health Center, even if you go in there, they have a whole cabinet of every possible supply, all size, diapers, wipes, it's beautiful.
So for privacy, it's obviously better to be in a separate, unisex or non-gender specific room.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with a few other faculty who saw articles that like Starbucks is trying to not have public restrooms because homeless people go in there and sleep, or people are doing drugs, right? So my mind starts to go there about like, how, I guess we can't prevent, how it gets misused, but someone might see that as
A place for
bed,
someone to sleep.
or something else that would still prevent you from being able to access it, That's,
I was in the eighth largest library on the planet, which is in Seattle. It's beautiful. And they had a used needle dispenser in their restroom. And I'd never seen that before. And I
Yeah.
said, well, why do you have that? And they're like, well, people come in here and use drugs.
yeah.
And they might as well be discarding their safely, because we can't stop them from coming in and using drugs in the bathroom, but we can help them leave the environment clean when they're done.
Yeah, just like
So
lawsuits, because I guess people are going in there and dying too, right? And then they're stuck and no one can get them for hours. And then the families are suing because they provided a lockable restroom that someone can go into. It's unbelievable.
So we took which if you'll attend tomorrow, I'm speaking before the AIA tomorrow, the Women in Architecture. And tomorrow I'm diving into more of the federal buildings I've been working with. So we took a trip from here to Seattle and back. My little sister lives up there. And on the way, we stopped at the Blackwell Visitor Center. We stopped at the Crazy Horse Monument and the Mount Rushmore and Yellowstone National Park. And at all places, at Blackwell Visitor Center, I changed Max in the back of my car. This was after House Bill 3015 died. Senator Paul Rosino killed that bill. Didn't believe that these were needed in our visitor centers. But if I can go file an ADA grievance with ODOT and force the Oklahoma Department of Transportation to put these in all 8 of our visitor centers, maybe he should have let his committee hear the bill, right? So, anyway, Blackwell Visitor Center, and we went up to Mount Rushmore, and I had a National Park Ranger tell me to put him on the floor. At the Crazy Horse Monument, the people there were so very kind, and they offered a table in a conference room. But that's where a place like this, so could you imagine someone having their diaper changed on one of these tables? And then at Yellowstone National Park, I had someone, a park ranger, direct me to the floor in a tourist visitor center. I found a park bench, or not a park bench, but a shower bench to change him on. It was about this narrow, about that long, but it worked. It wouldn't work for, you're gonna be my person. It wouldn't work for you. So I filed an ADA grievance with the National Park Service, and I have a complaint with the United States Department of Interior. So if Congress won't talk to me about the lack of restroom access in their office buildings and at the White House Visitor Center, if we went to the White House Visitor Center, we could all load up and go, and someone in that building would direct Max to the floor, and then how would we all react to that? It's an issue for Congress, isn't it? So, but caregivers, going in and me filing ADA grievances on buildings, on our visitor centers, on state capitol buildings, I shouldn't have to be doing that. We shouldn't have lawmakers in the state of Oklahoma fighting against that anyway, or members of Congress ignoring it. Caregivers do a lot, and it's the hardest job on the planet. I love my child, and I would do it tenfold. But having to fight for his federal rights to a safe and healthy restroom everywhere we go, because now I can't just be quiet about it, right? Maybe one of you guys can carry the conversation forward at the University of Oklahoma. But if we went to a basketball game at the Lloyd Noble Center, where do you think I'd change his pants? Or where do you think I have changed his pants, because we like to go? I'm changing him on the floor in a conference room at the Lloyd Noble Center. What about the stadium? If we went to, he hasn't been to a football game yet, but if we chose to go to an OU football game, where do you think I'd change his diaper if he needed it? It's 2023. So now every time you see a restroom, you're gonna think of Max. You're gonna think, where would Max have restroom access?
What can we do, Audra, to help? like, I know there's send something to the legislature, right?
Yes.
Is there a fund to contribute to help? Is there something that we can,
Yes,
I mean, it's just money, right? But I'm talking about like, how can we go make this a bigger issue and take it seriously?
I would love for each one of you to take this wheelie, maybe put it on your desk, open it up, pop it in your pocket. But anytime you're on a project, I want you to remember this conversation and carry it forward when you can. So if you want to reach out to the University of Oklahoma and said, hey, Audrey Beasley came and talked to us about Max Love Day, just by one email, one of you sending an email to somebody about the stadium, Wood Noble Center, this building, do you know how incredible it feels when you finally get a table installed on the work you've done? One of you could get a table in this building just by starting the conversation. Where would Max have restroom access in this building? It could be the first building on campus to have one. I like to be first. It's fun.
I don't make the decisions, but if you all decide to build one and put it in the restroom, I won't say anything.
Yeah. So if you don't, if
Well,
you're not
I'll say
ready,
good job.
if you're not registered to vote, I hope you will stop by and get a voter registration packet. And then if you'll go to findmylegislatoreok.gov, if you don't know who your state representative or your state senator is, I hope you will take the time today and find them and reach out and say, what are you personally doing to support Max's law? And why are we in year 4 of this?
Find my legislator.
Find
Okay.
my legislator, ok.gov. And you can reach out to members of Congress too. And when you go to Find My Legislator, ok.gov, it'll tell you who your members of Congress are and your state representative and your state senator.
Is anyone planning to attend the AA? I put the link on Canvas a couple weeks ago, so to go back. Does anyone schedule allow that? I know it's a
What time is it at Luca?
12 to 1. As many of us as could be there to support Audra. And then, I can't remember if I asked Melissa, I don't know if she contacted you, maybe you could record tomorrow, we could share it.
I will reach out tonight and ask that they be recorded, and then maybe you guys can take a look at it.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions?
I do. So, I'm a mom of 3 boys as well, so everything you said, it hits a spot.
Mhm.
You know, I understand you. I don't have a child with disabilities, but I have experienced having to roll around the stroller, double stroller too, so it's huge, right? And wondering, where am I gonna change my babies, or where am I gonna lay them because they're scared of that table, or whatever the case would be. So, trust me, you've touched a part of me, that girl. So, with that being said, are there any other challenges that you face? You know, we already understand bathrooms, but is there any other places that you feel like, wow, you know, this is challenging for me to maneuver to do? Because when we are all designing a building, it's so easy to think about what we want and how we move. We're able-bodied, but sometimes we don't take into consideration how it feels to be seated or pushing a stroller. Most of us don't, they haven't pushed a stroller perhaps, so they don't understand.
Mhm.
What are other challenges that you face as a mother with a child with disabilities? How can we help you? What should we keep in mind? You know, like I said, one thing is you walking, another thing is you being from this position that,
Mhm.
what can we do?
Oh my goodness. So parks, wood chips, curbs, anything that any barrier like a curb, or even a dumpster set in place of a curb cut. I just experienced that last weekend. Well, MAPS 3 planning had us out to Southern Oaks Library, or Recreation Center, come out and let's talk about parks and accessibility, and there they have a dumpster parked right in front of the curb cut. And it's the first thing I noticed when I got out of my car. And I'm like, I just ran for Oklahoma City Council and I didn't make the primary. But anyway, so all this work led me to want to do that. But anyway, going to all these planning meetings and informing myself on the rapid transit that Oklahoma City is looking at implementing, and our parks, and everywhere we go. I mean, even accessible parking misuse and abuse. It's horrible, and it's a $500 fine in the state of Oklahoma. Brad Henry smacked a good one on, but it's so high, the tickets are so high that Oklahoma City Police don't like to ticket people, because it's a $500 ticket. But if we don't have police officers ticketing for accessible parking abuse, then it runs rapid, right? So maybe we need to look at making that fine more reasonable and start ticketing everybody. So don't ever park in accessible parking. But yeah, just man-made barriers, it's closer for us to have the dumpster there, because we work here and we want to just carry it out when we're done and throw it away, whereas the dumpster should have been way back there because it's an eyesore anyway. Keep it over there, and the employees just have to walk to the end of the parking lot to throw the stuff away. But there's barriers everywhere. Just imagine walking alongside a 6.5-year-old that uses a walker and wheelchair. Yeah.
Even privately, may I ask, I know that, when it comes to private housing, it's another ballpark, but we recently, actually, last semester, in my studio, we worked on housing, ADA housing. And if you don't think about it until you're actually in that position of somebody in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
What struggles do you have with private housing? I mean, the bathroom, I can only imagine the bathrooms in your house, or how do you handle these things?
He can't go to some people's houses, because we have friends that live in like a 2-story apartment. He can crawl up bleachers and crawl up steps. And so one time we were at an archery tournament at the kids' school, and Max was using his walker and wanted to go sit by one of the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, we'll see you later. And she goes, hey, Audra, how's he gonna get up here? I'm like, he can get up there. Well, he just parked his walker and he crawled up the bleachers. That's his normal. It looks different to you and I, but for him, that's how he gets up bleachers. And to get upstairs, he'll go backwards. But he can get upstairs. So,
Okay, but you shouldn't have to.
right, well, I'm gonna get to a point where he weighs almost 90 pounds. I can't, I've had 3 pulled, I power lift. I Olympic power lift, you guys. I know it doesn't look like it, but I do. But I started working out a couple of years ago because I kept getting pulled groin muscles lifting him all the time. And I'm getting to, I can still lift him, but I shouldn't be lifting him. So he has to be able to do even getting into the car, out of the car, in bed, out of bed, into the bed. I was pregnant and we redid our bathroom with him. But anyway, we got one of those really deep soaking tubs because I'm so tall. I just wanted to but he still can't get in it on his own.
Yeah, we're talking about a kid. Imagine they're not getting younger. What about our parents, grandparents? So I'm really glad that I met you today, because this is something that always goes through my mind. I'm really passionate about the whole ADA and universal design. Am I great at designing? No, but just keeping people like you, your son, and being my own grandparents in mind. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I had this client recently. She's become a friend now, but her son encouraged her to build an ADA-friendly house. And I hope that would just become the standard.
Yeah.
Why can't we just build them ADA? The doors are a little wider. You think of tile. So coming into her home, there's no step up to come to her door. You park in her driveway, and it's just a constant flow, right? There's no barriers. And then when you walk through her entryway and you walk into her kitchen, even into her bedroom, there is a path of tile that comes around. She still has carpet in her bedroom, but there's a path of tile that goes from her front door, through her kitchen, through her bedroom, down through her bathroom to this like office area. It literally, when it's pointed out, it looks like just a track of tile, but there's still carpet in the rooms where it's appropriate. So that was the first time I'd been into a home and thought, I need a home like this. Like we can still have carpet, but on the main thoroughfares and track areas, there's tile and all these doors are wide, and there's not even a threshold bump. It's all fluid. And I've read some articles about that just becoming the standard, and why would anybody not want a wider door? Is there a reason for that? It's just cost?
Yeah.
You know, it's more space, more money, more distance for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It got me thinking though too, when you said that once you hit 6 fixtures, you need the family restroom, right? There's laws like that or codes. Same thing with area refuge. So you were just talking about that, I'm thinking, as I tell students all the time, like, it doesn't matter if there's one person in the building, there should still be an area refuge at the stairs. Because like, what if you can't physically carry the person, right? Then you get in the area refuge and wait for firefighters or wait for the emergency to end.
Yeah.
But the code defines that to be like, once you have so many people, or the type of occupancy type, you know, and even fire ratings of it. So it's like, let's just have the 2-hour enclosure and have an area refuge where people could be in a wheelchair or cane or strollers,
Mhm.
you know, because the elevators don't work, they're recalled.
Oh, I'd carry them out. They'll help me, we screw around, they'll help me. We carry them out. That would be very hard in that
Yeah.
situation, and we had to address that situation on his IEP too.
Yeah,
In the middle, my kids go to school at John Rex, right in the middle of downtown Oklahoma City. And, just putting in what ifs into his IEP,
yeah.
who's responsible for him in that situation? Yeah.
One last question or thought? It's been super informative. We really appreciate you being here today, Colbert.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.